Good morning. Welcome to Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Penny Brewer, and I'm the worship associate today for our virtual service alongside our guest speaker, Jennifer Springsteen, who is from Portland, Oregon, and is completing her studies at Star King School of Ministry. And we are so delighted that she is with us today. Before we start, let's pause to acknowledge that members of our congregation occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Coast Salish tribes, the homelands of the Suquamish, the Duwamish, the Chimacum, and the Sklallam. People were ceded under duress through the Point Elliott and Point No Point treaties. We are grateful guests on these lands and affirm Indigenous sovereignty both past and present. This acknowledgement does not substitute for the need to build authentic relationships with modern-day members of these tribes and to learn about their living culture and history. And many of us are doing just that. Today, our faith community is sustained by the generosity of our members. Your contribution will nourish the spiritual growth of our community through weekly worship and ongoing programs that cultivate connection, belonging, sharing, and caring. Included in the video description and displayed on the screen is information to make a contribution to Cedars, either by check to the office or through our PayPal account. Please take time to either now or later in the service to make a contribution to help sustain Cedars. Your gift is greatly appreciated. Cedars is committed to being a welcoming and inclusive community. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, we welcome you. In all the ways you experience and express gender, in the beauty of who and how you love, we welcome you. With all the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, we welcome you. Whether you come here broken or whole or anywhere in between, we welcome you. No matter how long you've been away or how soon you will return, we welcome you. You are invited to join us today and always, with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today and always. Today, we are celebrating Father's Day. And I just want to do a shout out to my brother Chris, who is spending time in Olalla with all 6 of his children and 11 grandchildren. They came from Olympia, Seattle, Olalla, and Portland to celebrate him. He's very much loved and respected. We're talking about fathers and families today, and I have 4 brothers, all younger, 2 years younger, 9 years younger, 11 years younger, and even 22 years younger than me. I've been living with my brother Chris, who is the oldest, for about 14 years here on Bainbridge, and that fact continues to surprise us. We thought we'd just be together for a year or two. And Chris and I have the same father. The other 3 have a different father who really raised all 5 of us. My brother Nick, who is 11 years younger, he and his wife Kay came to visit a couple of weeks ago, and we had a great Greek dinner together. I made a moussaka and all kinds of good food, and we talked and laughed, and it was wonderful to see them after a long time. We began talking about our dad, the one that raised us, And Nick was shocked to hear about some of our experiences with our dad, the kind of childhood we had had. He was loving, he gave us guidance and support, but he was also filled with rage. Dad came to the States after World War II. He was Dutch. He'd been in the underground. He'd been in a concentration camp. He had lived on rats and tulip bulbs. He had had a horrible, horrible life there during the war. And he had very severe PTSD when he came. Our years with him were tumultuous and emotional, and he was especially hard on Chris. And Nick, our brother, had no idea. Here we were sitting around the dining table sharing our totally different realities about our family. All of us in our 60s and 70s, still trying to figure out our family, our father. The next morning, Nick's wife told me Nick was devastated because they both had always seen Dad as perfect. I'm hoping he realizes how impossible that can be. I bring this up because all of us come from families that are much more complex than we first realize. And the myths about the perfect family, the perfect father, the perfect mother can still get in the way of us experiencing and having compassion for our families and everyone else in our lives. My brother Chris went on to become a pretty outstanding dad, cutting his work in half to be with his children when they were really young, being there for them in all ways to this day. My husband was a loving but distant dad who focused most of his life on his profession rather than the family. He never put the family first. My son is one of our newfangled dads. He works from home, helps with children and home tasks, loves to play and laugh and support his children. I light the chalice in honor of all the dads and fathers and those who take on the important role of dad, bringing love, guidance, support, and care to our children. Thank you.
As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat each other kindly, as we are all one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness because that is how we will all become the best that we can be.
Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean deep and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples to the sky. What to give you, what to call you, who am I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears infernal haunt my heart. What to give you, what to call you, oh my God. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, take our hearts, take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work
Hello, and happy Father's Day. It's the day we set aside to offer gratitude for fathers and the father figures in our lives. For some, it is a day of joy and celebration. For some, loss. For others, pain and regret. Let this space today be the container you need it to be. May all here be held in love and tenderness. Let's start our time together with a poem by Barbara Jane Reyes. It's called Brown Girl Has Walked into the Wild, Palms Open. See how she lists. The body is bent as light as wind will it. And so you must tread light. Mind the rocks underfoot, you must tread slow. There has been drought. See where water has long ago troughed, has carved her. See how she branches, twisting her many hands, reaching. Her roots also reach, sweetened from reaching. When fire arrives, she toughens. She will slough away the thick. She will be slick and dark beneath the rough. She will mimic fire in her bones. Remember, know her bones glisten. See how she rests. The body will fall as time wills it. And from her thick trunk mushrooms cluster, her belly a nest of moss and poison. When broken open, see what of her mother she has kept, what of her father, what of the stars. Come and let us worship.
We worship with open hearts, nurture a learning spirit, serve justice with compassion, and love without judgment. We worship with open hearts, nurture a learning spirit, serve justice with compassion, and love without judgment. We worship with open hearts, nurture a learning spirit, serve justice with compassion, and love without judgment.
I want to tell you a story today that comes from a collection of moral tales published by the UUA in the Tapestry of Faith curriculum. And my story happens in a small village, as so many of my stories do, as so many of the stories that we hear do. And in this small village lives a woman named Martha. Now, Martha is beloved in the village. People come to Martha all of the time with their troubles and their struggles and their questions. Martha herself has never married, and she never had children, but she has become sort of the parent of the entire village. And increasingly, as she grows older, people begin to believe that Martha knows everything. She knows the answer to everything. That's what people think. Martha herself, of course, never says this. She never claims that she knows everything. But it is true that she is very wise. She has spent a long time looking and learning and paying attention. She knows about plants and herbs, how to make people feel better, both physically and emotionally. And she reads all the time, so she knows the answers to a host of different kinds of questions. So maybe it's not true that Martha knows everything, but Martha knows a lot. Now, as I said, most people in the village think of Martha like a parent. Actually, even the person that I'm about to tell you about thinks of Martha as a parent in some ways. And this is a young woman named Kate. And Kate is increasingly annoyed that people say that Martha knows everything. Nobody knows everything, thinks Kate. And so the more she thinks about this, the angrier she gets at Martha. And she decides that she is going to teach Martha a lesson and prove that Martha does not, in fact, know everything. And so Kate sets out one morning to capture a little bird. It takes most of the day, but finally she captures a small songbird in a net, and she puts it in her hands. And she goes with friends of hers who are curious about what is going on. What does Kate have against Martha anyway? She goes to Martha's door. She has a friend knock on Martha's door as she holds the bird trapped in her hands behind her back. Martha opens the door and sees many of the people she loves best in the village. "Hello," she says. "Would you like to come in?" Kate frowns. "It is said that you know everything. If you know everything, what am I holding behind my back?" Martha is a little confused, but she takes a deep breath and she listens. And she can hear the faint rustling of wings. And so she says, "I do not claim to know everything, but I think that you are holding a bird behind your back." This answer makes Kate furious, even more angry than she was before. How? How could Martha know this? And so Kate, in her anger, takes a dreadful step. And she decides to ask Martha if the bird is dead or alive. And she thinks if Martha says the bird is dead, she will simply set it free. And if Martha says the bird is alive, then Kate will crush the bird in her hands. And either way, Martha will be wrong. And so she says, "Is the bird dead or alive?" Martha takes a deep breath. She smiles sadly at Kate, whom she knows is not trying to be a bad person. There's just something heavy weighing on Kate's heart. She is not feeling her best today. So Martha looks directly at Kate, and she says, "Kate, the answer to your question is in your hands. The answer is in your hands." Kate finds herself turning red with embarrassment and sadness, and she brings the bird out in front of her and she apologizes to the bird. "I am so sorry," she says, and she lets the bird go free. Martha smiles and she says, "The answer was in your hands. Would you like to come in for some soup?" And so all of the teenagers go in and have some soup, and all is right again with the world. And that is my story.
Another reading. My father's coat was made of finest muscle. Fish scales were its lining. From them waterfalls glistened. Rainbow trout swam in the depths of its pockets among the twigs and polished stones. Inside this coat, my father was invisible. He became the smell of wet leaves, the smoke of campfires. And when he wrapped me in his sleeves, I stepped inside the dark forest. Will you pray with me? God of many names and of none at all, Spirit of life, source of all that remains holy. Each of us has been blessed with the gift of our life, and for that we are grateful. We are grateful for those in our lives who have offered us comfort and love. Bless our children, our children's children. Have mercy on the children of those who are strangers to us and to the children who are yet to be born. Be tough on us when tough is what we need to grow stronger, but be gentle with us when we are weak. Hear our longing. Hear our longing. Let's be together in a moment of quiet gratitude. Amen.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home. A long, long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long, long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long, long way from home.
I'm so glad to be with your church today. Thank you for inviting me. Last semester, I took a course on the Book of the 12, the minor prophets in the Old Testament. I was the only non-Christian identifying student in the class, so it came as a surprise to me when the professor began his first lecture by announcing that we wouldn't be speaking of Jesus. He doesn't exist here, Professor Gonzalez told us. We wouldn't search for hope where none existed. We wouldn't make excuses for Yahweh, or the Lord, as is translated in many of our Bibles. Several students rolled their eyes. They heard this lecture the previous semester when they first dove into the Old Testament. Certainly, Yahweh was a disappointment. Out of the gate, we read Hosea and the metaphor of Israel as a woman who Yahweh would kill with thirst and have no pity on her children. And that was the tame stuff. Yikes. There was too much humanness to this Old Testament Lord. And I don't mean that as in humanity or human kindness. I mean everyday jerkiness. The kind of humans that cut you off on the freeway without a signal and then make it seem like you did something wrong. Wasn't the Lord supposed to be something greater than the rest of us humans? Something that could control the worst of human nature that we failed to do? Anger, jealousy, vengeance, ego. No wonder Jesus is such a hit. No wonder Christian ministers tend to stick to the New Testament. And while I sympathized with my fellow seminarians, it didn't cut me as hard as it did them. But I tell you what did. Atticus Fitch, America's favorite dad. Remember the famous line, "Mockingbirds don't do one thing but make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up people's gardens. They don't nest in corn cribs. They don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. That's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird." He stood up for justice in the face of danger and mockery. Like many mockingbird lovers, I jumped at the chance to read Go Set a Watchman, the original Harper Lee draft, before the story shifted completely into the point of view of the child scout. My heart sank to learn of Atticus's racist views. I thought, really? Our beloved Atticus? My own dad was a little like the Gregory Peck version of Atticus. Slender, quiet, bespectacled, born in Macon, Georgia. He was an attorney before he was nominated to the circuit court bench in Virginia. This is my first Father's Day without him. My relationship with my father was a mixture of awe and disappointment. He was smart, a very talented pianist. He was considered a fair judge whose thoughtfully written opinions now reside in the law library at the University of Richmond, where he received his law degree and later taught. But he cheated on my mother with his secretary and left our family when my sister and me were barely teenagers. I spent the rest of my youth and adulthood scrambling to get back into his life, to win his approval, to be seen by him. The sting of disappointment followed me to the very end, when he didn't want either of us girls at his bedside when he died. It had nothing to do with COVID. He died of pulmonary fibrosis, and we would have braved hell and high water to be there with him. He didn't want us to see him that way, as he put it. But I tell you, something shifted in me after he died. I've started to let go of all those tight-fisted expectations and just let it be what it was. What I want to hold on to is this memory. When I was home from college, I'd meet him at the courthouse at lunchtime, and then the two of us would drive together to some strip mall for Chinese food. This time I'm remembering, he played a cassette tape of Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. I don't recall the orchestra or the conductor or anything like that, but he told me the story as we listened. Here, the peasants in the fields, unsuspecting. Or, listen, Napoleon's troops are marching in. It's cold. Can you feel that? Ah, the spiraling. The tides are turning. Here, the tides are turning. His hand dancing in the air as we sat in the parked car. He cut it off before the cannons and rewound the tape to the beginning. The second time through, we sat with the stereo turned up high and the story in our heads. When the cannons blew at the end, we were both in tears. And I have this. My father was on oxygen for many years before he finally sold his grand piano. He played the Safari's Wipeout, although it nearly wiped him out. The whole body moves as you play. What a sweet memory. What sweet memories do you hold of someone that you love? There's so much we can't control. Isn't it worth it to keep a memory dear and let go what we can't make different? It's easier said than done, true. But it's better to knit these alterations into our heart. It creates peace and allows love to flow. These past 14 months have put parenting to the test. I don't know about you, but I was grateful for the honest reporting of these difficulties. Before COVID, social media had a negative impact on many of us. Maybe it still does. I've discontinued my time on all of it. Too often, what we see are shining-faced kids and proud parents at ball games and hikes and fancy trips and having delicious meals together. Scrolling through, my anxiety rose. Am I doing enough? Am I providing enough? Why did I let my family game night slip away? Why don't we do a mandatory hike before my teenage daughter is out of the house for good? Social media creates a world of comparison and guilt. Why do we do this to ourselves and others? There must be a better way to share and be supportive, to drop these myths about what we think best parents are out there doing while we slog along with our inefficiencies. My daughter is 15. I never thought we'd both be in school and confined to our small house day in and day out. It was difficult. I'm reminded of a poem by Pat Mora titled Teenagers. See if it sounds familiar to you. One day they disappear into their rooms, door and lips shut, and we become strangers in our own home. I pace the hall, hear whispers, a code I knew, but can't remember. Mouthed by mouths I taught to speak. Years later, the door opens. I see faces I once held open as sunflowers in my hands. I see familiar skin, now stretched on long bodies that move past me, glowing almost like pearls. I love that image of our teenagers glowing like pearls. I try to remember that when my daughter rolls her eyes at me. She's at the age where she knows us, her parents, for who we really are, warts and all. You can see it in her eyes, that slight disappointment, the disappointment that we felt with our own parents, how this cycle repeats. When my daughter was first born, crying alone in that funky crib hospitals have, my husband took her to him and arranged the cushions of the couch around his body like bumpers, and then lay on the floor with her on his chest. That first night, there was so much intention, so much possibility for the three of us. She won't have this memory, of course. We'll have to give it to her. How he could get her to sleep every night with her little body against his barrel chest, soothed by his heartbeat. When disappointments come, as they do, perhaps she'll hold on to the knowledge that she was comforted and protected. Comforted and protected. That is what we hope to receive and what we hope to give. And there's something else that I can't quite put my finger on. Something beyond the shape of love that is like liquid. I'm trying to lift it up and share it with you. We know it when we feel it. What then do we expect from the divine in our lives? Comfort and protection? Love? Salvation? And yet talk of disappointments. And I don't just mean Yahweh when he gets mean. I'm thinking of the injustice of race relations, slavery, the pain of animals, the scars on our Earth Mother's body. I don't need to go on. You know these sorrows. I can hear Professor Gonzalez again. You won't find much hope in these pages. When is it, what is it then that bends our knees and claps our hands together in prayer? My Sufi Muslim friend tells me she practices effacement, the shedding of desires and impulses of the ego and letting go of what can't be controlled. The practice uses the same word that we use when a woman's cervix stretches and thins in preparation for childbirth. By effacing, one won't lose themselves. One merges into connection with the divine. They transform. We have the potential to give life to children, but there is a giver to this giver of the gift, the source of all mercy. We inherit the cycle of awakening to the knowledge that our parents are human, fallible, and frustrating. Even when we vow not to repeat our parents' mistakes, we end up with our own. That in our DNA is our human inheritance. We also have a divine inheritance, a stamp on our souls that is ours alone, and it includes love, grace, and gratitude. These inheritances must come into alignment. We can live into them or deny them. So I say, rather than beating up against what we don't understand, what seems imperfect or unattainable, we must align ourselves with the rhythm of all that is holy. Let us place our hearts against the heart of the divine and rest in all that possibility. Rest in all that intention. We will know it when we feel it. May it be so, and amen.
You are loved, my precious child, with love as boundless as the sea. My love for you is like a rose, unfolding love eternally. You are loved, my precious child. My love light shines in every star. You are loved, you are loved, you are loved. guided precious child, for I am there to light your way. In times of joy, in times of tears, I share your moments every day. You are guided, precious child, as you seek my voice within. For you are loved, you are loved, you are loved.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of compassion. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We gathered today in gratitude for those who cared for and comforted us. Even if they aren't sitting beside you in the pews, know that those in this congregation care for you too. Take comfort in this church. Take comfort knowing that each of you are imprinted with your own unique kinship with the divine. In the words of Rebecca Parker, there is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. Go in peace, practice love, and amen.